Thank you, Megan, for that introduction. And of course, I hope the very short footage that you've seen tonight gives you some idea of what it is that we are facing. But of course, let me begin by acknowledging and of course paying my respects to the traditional owners and guardians of the land where we are gathering here this evening. And of course, we also ask for their blessing as we gather, to each and every one of us. In Kiribati, whenever we interact, we bless each other before we begin the business. So let me bless you. And so what I would do is I would say, Kam Namewre, meaning, may you be blessed. And I would also please ask you to bless me back by saying, Mewre. Okay, so wait. So let me begin. Let me bless you. Kam Namewre. Let's try again, all right? Kam Namewre. Okay, so if you didn't bless me, my blessing would come back. Now you got my blessing. Where do I begin? It's been a long journey for me. I've been doing this for the 20 years, and it doesn't get any easier. As Megan said, this is the third time that I would have spoken here. But let me share with you something that I felt this morning when I attended this morning's session. And I think it's already been said. I went away this morning feeling that there was something very different about what is happening here today. There's a great deal more. There's something different in the air. Okay? I can sense a stronger sense of commitment. People are seriously talking about doing something about what is happening, which is something that I didn't feel the last two times that I was here. And so what it is, I want you to find out what it is that is driving that change. And I believe maybe, why is this happening? I went away and thought over it. And maybe because it's the realization that climate change and the threat of what's going to happen is coming closer to becoming real. I remember I came here in 2018, the last time I came before the lockdown. And I went on a speaking tour, and one of my speaking engagements, I said that there was people sitting like you are sitting here tonight. And because I was wondering, how do people listening to me speak about something that seems so foreign and irrelevant to their lives? And in 2018, I said, I'm sure that many of you sitting here now don't don't relate to climate change, to what I'm talking about. But let's wait. We'll see what happens the next summer. And of course, in 2019, you had your worst bushfires. And I was kicking myself that I just do a curse. It was never my intention. But I think it's the reality that the science that has been coming forth, what's been happening in different parts of the world over the last few years, are very, very strong signals of what is happening, endorsing what the science has been saying over the last few years. In our part of the world, we face a very different situation because, I don't know how to describe it to you because not many people can understand that when the high tide comes in, there is just that margin between the high water mark and the land. And so, over the at the beginning of every year, we get the extra high tides. And so I was talking to my wife yesterday and this afternoon, take the shots because the next high tide, which was 5 o'clock this afternoon, is going to be very high. And so I live on the edge of the water. I built a seawall to protect the land, my place, from erosion. And I also built a wall about this high so that the water will not come over. Earlier this year, about 2 weeks ago, the water was coming over and coming into the front of my door. And this is what we are living with. Okay? Our people do not understand what is happening because when I was in office, I didn't bother to explain what was happening. And they don't read the reports. They think it's still part of the normal weather cycle, but it is not, because it is changing. Where I am living, I've lived there for the last 40 years, and I've seen a very significant rise in sea level. A lot of people ask me, do you see the sea level rise? Of course, I don't lie there watching the sea level rise because you cannot see it. But over a period of 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, you will see the change. And I have seen the change. And so I read the report that came out, the latest IPCC report, and this is what it said, in part. Urgent action is needed because once it's taken, it will secure a livable future for all. The IPCC, that is rubbish. It's not correct. Because that assessment report number 4 in 2007 clearly indicated that the most vulnerable countries will be underwater by the end of the century. Subsequent reports have moved forward the prediction. The 6th assessment report, which came out in February last year, now puts a time scale at 2060. But the question is, have they taken into consideration the fact that the Greenland ice sheet is melting and has the potential to raise sea level rise by 7 meters? Have they taken into consideration the reality that it's become irreversible? The Doomsday Glacier is also melting. And so the scenario for countries like mine is very bleak indeed. And I've always understood, and I've come to acknowledge the brutal reality, that whatever happens, even if we can remain below 1.5 degrees Celsius, we will still be underwater. And so some might ask, so why do you bother to keep doing this? And the reason is because I don't want to happen to the rest of the world what is going to happen to us. Because at the end of the day, when it all comes down, by 2060, but I'm absolutely sure that well before 2060, we will be running around chasing our properties because the water would be. Our future is doomed. So what options are there for countries, for our people? Countries in the region, in the Pacific region, the most vulnerable countries. We are barely 2 meters above sea level, okay? And that is a liberal measurement. And so, I asked the question, what do you think our future would be when the sea level would rise above the elevation of the land in which we live? Over the years, I've been moving between different sets of emotions. There was a time when I was so angry. And there was a time when I got so depressed. And there was a time when I got so paralyzed, realizing the fact that I had no solution. If any of the people that I served would ask me the question, sea level is rising, do you have a solution? My honest answer would have been no. There is nothing we can do about it. It's beyond our control. But again, it's about living beyond that, because such an answer is not acceptable. It cannot be acceptable. Because if you give that kind of an answer, you're not deserving of leadership. There is always a solution. We just have to find it. And so, what did I come up with? Maybe we can raise our islands. Maybe there was a time when I was talking about floating islands. And do you know how much they cost? About $2 billion, I think, to accommodate something like 30,000 people. And I cannot imagine myself living in something like a science fiction environment, okay? But it may be that indeed may be the solution, because the sea level is going to rise and continue to rise above the levels that we might be able to raise our islands. I had come in 20 by the time that I'd gone through this. And I came out of it and I said, no, I have to come out of this paralysis. I have to find solution. And so I started thinking crazy, because it's a crazy situation and it requires a crazy answer. And so that's when I went to Japan, and they had a model of a floating island. I looked around for how to raise the islands above the rising seas and above the rising storms. But until today, we still don't have those solutions. And the reason is because we don't have the resources in order to do that. I've come to the realization that we can never be able to raise all of the islands, but maybe one or two, simply to say for my grandchildren, wherever they may be, to be able to say, yeah, we used to live there. It's no longer there, but there are 2 islands left we can call home. And so this is the reality that we've had to contend with. And this is, coming here today, I was listening this morning. And as I said, I definitely will come away with a very positive feeling out of this, because I can see the momentum of what is happening. You know, people like you with the capacity and the imagination to find solutions. Mm-hmm. Maybe you find a solution for us. But at this point in time, I'd been advocating a proposal, a policy, a concept of what do we do? The only way we can adapt is beyond our borders. And so I began advocating a policy, a concept of migration with dignity. And of course, my colleagues in the region, my other leaders said, no, they didn't like the idea, because it would undermine our negotiating position on the loss and damage issue. But we've got to come to realize that it's beyond that. It's about saving the future of our future generations. It's no longer a negotiation. We cannot negotiate against what is happening. The only negotiation we can do is doing what you were talking about today, ensuring that we don't continue to do what's been damaging the planet and the existence of people. I've been visiting your country quite often. I'm sure your governments find me a nuisance, because I keep being a nuisance to them. Okay? With your previous government, and maybe some of you might recall the time that I had a confrontation with one of your ministers in a dinner in Canberra. It was actually big news. One of your former Minister of Environment, I think, when during a dinner I was introduced to her, and she said, "Oh, you've come here for the money. Wait, I'll get my checkbook." I heard it, but I pretended not to hear it. But the people around me heard it, and they made a big issue about it. They wrote to the Prime Minister, the Speaker, and it was big news. But for me, it was sad, because at a time like this, we need to be human. We need to be moral human beings, not people looking for opportunities, but people looking to look after each other. And this is being human. And I've always referred to climate change as the greatest moral challenge ever to face humanity, because over the coming years, decades, our humanity is going to be truly tested. And so, listening today, I said, wonderful, so wonderful. But again, as I said, I've been pestering your ministers. And during my visit here in October, I visited some of your ministers. Not everybody, because I came at the wrong time when the Queen passed, so I couldn't meet everybody, because everybody was, very sad. But I think the reality of what's happening is, yes, Australia, under the new administration, has made a huge commitment, which you are delivering, okay, setting a target at zero emission by 2050. But I did ask your ministers, okay, fine, that's wonderful. What about your exported emissions? Something that I don't believe has come up during the discussions today, because that is a lot more significant than your domestic emission. And so I want to challenge you as innovative, imaginative entrepreneurs to find how to deal with that, because it will not solve the problem unless we can attend to that. And I remember that I challenged your ministers, and they said, oh, it's not our problem. But it is, because it doesn't stay in the borders of the countries where it's being emitted. And so, we've got to be a lot more sincere about the commitment to dealing with this, because unless we do that, then not only Australia, but the rest of the planet will be facing exactly the same fate we will be facing ahead of you. We are on the front line. And actually, the front line was the phrase that, the terminology that because it came, I'm a fisherman, so I go fishing around the islands. And I see these trees falling. And the next time I come around, several months, sometimes more than a year later, and the next line of coconut trees would fall as the land gets eroded. And so that is what is going to happen to everybody one day if we don't deal with this. It doesn't look like being addressed, because at this very moment, investment in exploration of oil and gas continues. And extraction of oil and gas continues. I was reading what's happening with the decision of your government today about the ban on further coal extraction. It's still going on. I understand that you cannot switch off in one go, but there has to be a roadmap if, as a planet and as a species, we are going to survive. I mean, we will go, but so will the rest of humanity if we do not address this. Once again, thank you very much, and congratulations. I congratulate you, but it's not done. It's a long way from being done. And thank you for having me. So, thank you very much.